Hello and welcome to the Crate and Crowbar. This is episode 158 and we are recording on the 20th of September 2016. I was about to say 1996. I'm young again. Joining me today are Tom Francis.
Hello.
And Chris Thurston.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Chris, you have two games. Would you like to tell us one of them? And
Sure.
then we can switch to someone else.
Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic format for the discussion
There's
we'll
no
have.
news.
There's no news. Couldn't figure out any news.
No.
You can buy an Oculus Rift in a shop now, if you must. There you go.
Yeah.
There's your news.
John Lewis. Imagine.
Go and get some placemats and an Oculus Rift.
The thing is, the electronics bit of John Lewis is on the top floor right next to the cafe, so
Is that true of all John Lewis's?
Oh, I was thinking of the one in London, but I forgot that there are other ones. Because that's the one where I know where the cafe is.
It's by the electronics bit.
Yeah.
What's good about the cafe?
The roof. Oh, they just do nice food. Good cakes.
Excellent.
Nice coffee. It's great. There's a nice view as well.
Would you recommend the cakes or the Oculus Rift?
I don't know. I mean, obviously the cakes are cheaper. They're more affordable.
What would be the best Oculus Rift experience to have whilst eating a cake in John Lewis Cafe?
Ooh. Maybe if it sort of replicated most of the experience but removed all of the extraneous noise and made sure that your person opposite was interesting.
So it removes most people and replaces...
Yeah, because then you could, go for cake. Well, I quite like going for cake on my own, but if you were feeling self-conscious, you could go and have cake on your
Put
own.
an Oculus Rift on your head,
An Oculus
and then you won't feel it at all.
And have a nice chat with, I don't know, George Clooney or something. Because he's really into coffee, so I assume he'd like cake as well.
Yeah, and a John Lewis Cafe. And talking to someone with an Oculus Rift on their head.
Probably.
Through the miracle of this new era of technology, you'll be able to pretend that you're in a John Lewis Cafe from anywhere you want through the magic of virtual reality.
That's true. I'm not sure that's what I'd want, though. I quite like the tea rooms that we went to the other day.
It's also
Had a
the
cream
journey, not
tea
just
the other day. This news segment's great.
It's perked up.
I know.
Cream teas.
Cream teas are brilliant.
They are great.
Yeah. Anyway, so this
Computer games. So,
game that you wanted to talk about.
So I could talk about two things this week. I have dipped my toes into Star Wars Battlefront again because it got its newest Dulk today. No one calls it Dulk, do they?
What is Dulk?
DLC,
Downloadable
imagine.
content.
Gross.
Which is its, so this is the Death Star DLC, which I was primarily excited about because it adds space battles, which the launch game didn't have, and that feel like an omission from Star Wars, a game. The base game has dogfights, which are all, above a planet, but it doesn't have, actual spacey space where, the space things are. And this new mode is, based on the Death Star theme, part of a multi-stage sort of attack defend thing, which is a really approximate attempt to kind of tell the story of the rebels getting plans for the Death Star and blowing up the Death Star. But like everything with Battlefront, its version of probably the interesting comparison is Battlefront is to Star Wars the films what Battlefield 1 is to real World War I history. It's the same thing, but with loads of bells and whistles on and absurd kind of extra ornamentation and stuff. So, in the first stage of this multi-part mission, the rebels have to destroy a Star Destroyer to make space for rebel transports to land on the Death Star, which is something that, just don't happen. But, rather than it just being the Death Star around Yavin where it is in the film, it's a fleet of Star Destroyers in a huge asteroid field next to a massive, great big planet thing. And there's a sun, there's lens flare, and it looks amazing. And is the same mostly alright game it always was. It just looks spectacular. And the space stuff actually sort of livens it up a bit because on rail, the whole game feels like a kind of arcadey, just pumping quarters into a machine, run and die, shoot, hope you have a nice time, look at some Star Wars things and hear some Star Wars sounds experience. So the space side of it works quite well. And then if the rebels win the initial space thing, everyone then gets into a transport and lands on the Death Star to rescue R2-D2, which again is this sort of like vague, sort of like drunk remembering of what happens in the film.
What was he doing over there?
Yeah, he's got to rescue
Doesn't he have the plans for the Death Star?
Yeah.
So couldn't he get out?
But exactly.
Like, because he's got them all written down on his insides.
Yeah, that is how computer files work.
Written on his insides, I see.
Like, he'd be able to find them and then escape.
Yeah, this is what I mean. It's it's sort of like simulation of it. It's very Star Warsy because it's also Star Wars nouns, but they've been subtly mad-libbed out of quite the right order in a way that's sort of interesting. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily matter because it's just bedlam. And, unfortunately, so from then, if the Rebels win again, it's supposed to progress to a sort of Death Star trench run thing, multiplayer trench run, which I'd love to try, but I've never seen the Rebels in my, hour of playing this win both of those stages. And unfortunately, even though it's sort of this, should be this story told across multiple phases of a mission, if the Imperials win at any point, the entire game is over. Which sort of, there's a potential there with the kind of branching mission system to have different scenarios played based on which team wins what game, but for the whole experience to go on for a set amount of missions. Whereas it's not, it's just like, if the Imperials win in space at the start, it's just like, oh, well, I guess we start again.
Is that not fair enough though? Because technically they are better than the Rebels, right?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose
they're
they're
stronger and they've got a Death Star. So,
yeah,
if the Rebels didn't manage to do that thing of jamming whatever it was in the exhaust pipe, then,
put a sock in the exhaust pipe. Really big
that
sock.
was essentially what happened. If they didn't manage to do that with that one guy that has magic, it's like they wouldn't have managed to do anything,
well,
right?
so this is partly the other thing is, it only partially succeeds as an attempt to create that kind of last ditch heroics because it's the best way to think about it is it's all those sort of beats from those films, but at absurd scale. So the best way, the interior of the Death Star fighting stuff is complete madness because it's beautifully recreated. Those sets are beautifully made with the massive blast doors and stuff. But it's just hordes of people throwing grenades at each other through those blast doors. The way to think about it is, that bit in A New Hope where Han Solo runs down a corridor chasing some stormtroopers, runs into a big room full of stormtroopers, and then turns around and runs the other direction. And then when they did the special editions, they pointlessly CGI'd that so that he accidentally runs into a hangar which has got every stormtrooper in it. And there's millions of them, and there's an AT-AT walking past, and it's, it's completely overdone. Battlefront is that. But there's also 50 Han Solos running screaming in, and there's 50 stormtroopers running screaming in the other direction as well, and everyone's throwing grenades, and there's smoke bombs going off and particle effects and stuff. So, yeah, I don't know if I have a more developed opinion on it other than that game is still kind of compellingly bad. In a sort of, it looks so good. And the design of it is so beautiful and crisp. And it's that Battlefield 1 thing of we've furnished your war experience for you. That sort of game as service, as this sort of experience that you tap into and just let the kind of the noise and the sound splash on your face for a bit and then you switch it off again. The gushing Star Wars hose that you turn on. But as a shooter and even as a sort of competitive multiplayer design, it's terrible. So I don't know why I play it. But I do know why.
Because it's got the word Star Wars on it, really,
it's not
hasn't
a mystery,
it? And
is
there's pictures of people from Star Wars.
Yeah, it's got a picture of the Star Wars man, so I like it.
Yeah.
Because it might as well be 1996 and I might as well be 9, essentially. Long story short.
I bought some Star Wars batteries the other day, apparently. I didn't even notice that they had Star Wars on them until I happened to post a photo of my shopping basket on Twitter. And then people were excited about the Star Wars batteries.
In what way? Were they just
They just have a picture of a stormtrooper on them. I don't know why.
I've seen them.
Maybe the stormtroopers are powered by the batteries.
Yeah, as several people pointed out that this might not be the best advert for your power-related thing because stormtroopers are not famous for their efficacy. Not because they run out of power, I suppose, but
no.
Maybe it's if you have Duracell batteries, then you can afford to miss as much as a stormtrooper.
But they're also human beings, aren't they? So what are they doing with these batteries? Are the batteries for the guns?
I guess so.
Maybe. Like, because then you could blame the ineffectual shooting on the people, but the fact that they can shoot would be sort of pro-battery.
Yeah, pro-battery stance.
I suppose.
I think any, like, energy weapon must have something you could call a battery,
source,
even if it's nothing like the ones we have today.
I'd assume you could charge them somehow, though. You know,
you
like
wirelessly charge.
Yeah, you have the USB. You have to plug them in. USB.
Between every scene of Star Wars, stormtroopers go back to their rooms and plug it in.
Give it a bus. Some of them have those little charge packs that carry around with them.
Yeah, well, that's what R2-D2 is.
Yes.
It's a charge pack.
Yeah.
It's a charge pack for C-3PO.
Presumably.
Who is himself basically an iPhone.
Yes.
So that's Battlefront. It certainly still exists, and yeah.
Who's in charge of the Battlestar thing? The big ball, the thing.
What? Who's in charge of the Death Star?
Yes.
It's Grand Moff Tarkin.
But like, so you can't
Death Star
like
Galactica.
commandeer the.
No, it's not a part. You can't like hold the E button to
Steer it around.
No.
Go left.
Why just because you can fly things in the snow land.
Yeah, you can.
Star
yeah,
Wars.
no, you can't like pick up the power up that makes you the Death Star. That would be the most amazing. The world's like slowest 360 no scope. The Death Star is slowly resolving.
You take out Yavin.
Yeah.
Yes, that's going on Twitch.
Mum, get the camera.
Shadow play.
6 billion frags.
So yeah, I'll play it because it makes the sounds I like, and it's got the pictures of the Star Wars man. But I certainly wouldn't. It's if it was a much cheaper experience, then I'd probably recommend it to people as a great showcase for decent PC hardware, and it looks amazing. But
Is it free DLC?
oh god, no.
Right.
No,
So-
I got the season pass in a moment of stupid weakness.
You did what?
This is months ago. This is long since past worth being angry at me about.
But how much is it? Like if somebody was...
It's like, so the game itself is like, it's EA and it's all through Origin, so the game itself is probably like £50, and then the season pass is like £40. And you don't have to buy the season pass, you could just buy the game and the DLC for like £15. Basically it's a choice between what you want to pay like 65 quid or 90 quid.
You could buy
this.
the board game for that. Star Wars Rebellion.
Yeah, which is much, much, much better.
Yeah, it's like 60 something quid.
Yeah, do what I do. Buy that board game, put Star Wars soundtrack on your iPad, and force your friends to come around and indulge you.
And then force your girlfriend to not take her turn until you found the appropriate music before the turn.
You completely kicked my ass though, and like it was terrifying.
I blew everything up. This is why I was in charge of the Death Star. Moved it around.
I didn't expect you to fire it for no
advantage.
reason. I sort of was assuming that
It was a warning.
you killed Chewie's entire homeworld.
I didn't know. I didn't.
It was.
I'm warning you, Chewie. And in order to
was
warn you, I
fine.
destroyed everyone you've ever loved.
I think he was fine. I took him prisoner.
Yeah, you
so he must
froze
have been
him
fine.
and then took him anyway.
Yeah.
You froze my Wookiee and then killed everybody I liked.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, so Star Wars Rebellion is an amazing board game, but not, and it is actually based on a computer game, so vaguely, that's not totally irrelevant. So yes, the other thing that I have been playing is also spaceship related, surprising no one, and it is Fractured Space, which has been, I think, in early access, beta, various forms for quite a long time, as far as I'm aware. It is a sort of capital ship, think like Battlestar Galactica scale ships, competitive multiplayer game with some, maybe, it has some of the MOBA in it, but not a lot. Ish.
What does that mean then?
So it's got leveling up within a game session. So you become more powerful as games go on. Mm-hmm. It also kind of has lanes and sort of has like a Rashan equivalent space
Hang on,
objective.
so are you a ship?
Yes.
Or are you a pilot? Or are there lanes on a ship?
No, so you are a massive capital ship, like a huge you're told that your huge spaceship has like 5,000 crew, and you pick from a variety of them that can upgrade in different ways.
Okay.
And these are piloted in third person with WAS and D, and you can go up and down, so it's not on a 2D plane like some games like this are. But it's got that kind of, it is a essentially a space naval combat game in that sort of like, turning your big slow ship into broadsides and managing the cooldowns on your various special weapons and abilities, which change with what ship you're piloting and stuff.
I love the idea of like getting to the helm of like a Star Destroyer sized ship and then just pressing WASD to steer it.
Yeah.
Right, here we go. I know
that
this.
feels like, I don't know how, like, cause when it looks amazing, it looks great, and the particle effects are great and stuff, and the sense of like these massive ships going to war, you can have wings of fighters that you send out and all that stuff. That actually looks great and does sell the fantasy of like these colossal capital ships trying to kill each other. But the way you control the ships and actually functionally the size of the maps make it feel a little bit pokey and do take away from the sense of scale, because you can sort of like slide these things around a bit. And
how is the map limited?
So the way it works is, each team has a base, which is a massive, like, sort of donut-shaped space station, like bristling with turrets and stuff. And the objective of the game is to capture the enemy's space station. And that is, there are opposite ends of the map. But the map is actually like 4 zones. So there's the home sector for each, no, 5, sorry. There's the home sector for each team, which are basically identical to each other, but with a different planet behind them. And then there's a middle sector, which is always like this kind of like orangey, angry red asteroid field with a massive space station in the middle of it, which comes into play in the middle of the game. And then either side of that, there's like, it's called like alpha sector and beta sector, but it's basically left lane and right lane. And these are on the mini-map divided up as like different quadrants basically. And the 2 side lanes, are randomly generated at the start of the game from a set. So there, I mean, as in there's a finite number of each type, but one of the first things people do is scout each lane and say, oh, this one's the Ice Rocks one this time, and this one's the, pillars in floating in space cluster over here. At the start of the game, you can make hyperspace jumps to either of the side lanes or the middle zone, essentially. And then hyperspace jumps back home and hyperspace jumps between them. And then in order to make hyperspace jumps to the enemy base, which is at the far end, you've got to capture, like, the enemy's relay station in one of the lanes, which opens up hyperspace routes through to the final place. So I like it partly because dramatically jumping in out of hyperspace into the right places on the map is a thing in that game. And in each side lane there are also mining facilities that you capture, and having a mining facility provides resources, but functionally it's XP over time, which level up everyone on your team, and you can go and get, become more powerful and so on. So that stuff is all quite kind of MOBA-y, but those, the individual like side areas are rectangular slices of space essentially, and it doesn't take too long to get from one side to the other unless you're in a very slow ship. So it can feel like this massive space war is taking place over a kind of, relatively small area. And also, it's so dense with cover, there's asteroids everywhere and stuff like that, because that's part of the way the game is designed, that space doesn't feel sort of like vast and empty, it feels sort of very busy from the start. It's not necessarily a problem, it's just that the fantasy doesn't like 100% hold up. But from what I've played of it so far, there's a bunch of things I really like about it. It's genuinely very deep, and the way different ships work is complicated, and ships have sort of side armor, and the best way to describe the combat is it's got a little bit of Eve to it, but without the sort of auto-firing weapons. You have to kind of manually aim and click on the things you want to shoot. But you're sort of managing cooldowns and trying to be in a sort of advantageous position against people, and you spend a lot of time learning what different ships do, so that when the strengths and weaknesses of the ship you're flying, but also, what the enemy is likely able to do. So there are sniper ships that have, like, kilometer long guns on top of them that will sit at the back of a sector and like fire across the entire space sector. And I like to fly like a sort of utility ship that can go very fast and try and cap points from behind the enemy team and stuff, and weaving through asteroid fields, trying to like boost and make mini warp jumps to dodge sniper fire and then get on top of enemy ships to chase them out of position. There's a lot of strategy to it and sort of decision making. And I found that, takes a while to pick up, but it's got that gratifying, there's something to learnness of it. Like there's, getting good at it is clearly an undertaking. And I don't know if I will get good at it, but it's got, it's a different, and it feels very different as well. Despite having all those sort of MOBA trappings, it doesn't feel like any other game like that I've played, because no one's done that particular thing. Like, the fact that it's big vehicles that you upgrade, like it's free to play. And so the extra game stuff feels quite wargaming-y. Bit like World of Tanks or World of Warships, which would be the closest comparison, because you buy new ships, you unlock upgrades for them, you assign crew to them and stuff like that, and that's all part of it. But the in-the-game stuff has much more, as far as I can tell, much more interesting sort of macro and micro scale decision making in it. So that's great. There's some other really nice touches I like, especially for a game that is an indie game, as far as I can tell. There's some really nice investment of resources on certain things. So you have a crew, and the crew cards are part of the free-to-play thing. The crew are literally like playing cards that you buy packs of and, pull them out. And they've all got like names and personalities and stuff, but they've also all got voice actors. And so when you create a little hand of crew that you assign to a ship, and it's all percentage boosts to like turn rate and, warp cooldown time and weapon rate of fire and stuff like that. But it affects the barks you get in the game to an enormous extent. So your crew is constantly shouting it, but that particular combination of voices are the cards you've taken with you, which is a really nice choice. So
are they very different
from each other?
They're just all humans, right?
There's a couple of robots. There's they are all humans, but it's a variety of ethnicities and sort of backgrounds and genders and so on. Like, I like there's a captain. There's lots of like oblique references to Star Trek and stuff in it. So like one of the captains, the captain I run at the moment is a French woman who is like sipping a cup of tea on her on her profile picture, so she's like a kind of a lady Jean-Luc Picard from the tea to the being French, although he doesn't really. It's not that French. So all that stuff I really like.
Is there anyone who's like doesn't speak human language? Like, is there any sort of monstrous bird creature?
No,
that
there's
just
no
goes,
aliens.
"Arr!"
No, there are no aliens as far as I can tell.
Captain.
It's all humans and like robots that humans have made, so everything speaks.
I really liked that aspect of Star Trek Online, where you'd sort of have crew that would give you, like, they would have special abilities, and that would become like your loadout. Like, instead of slotting skills into your hotbar, you're putting crew at stations, and whatever they were good at would give you some cool maneuver you can do in battle, because you've got Riker, and so you can do the Riker maneuver. Yeah.
And like Riker, you can decide whether he has a beard or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a nice system. And actually the barks, there's a lot of barks, when it's stuff that's quite detailed. It's like, we've detected a cloaked ship nearby. And that's quite a good way of teaching you the ins and outs of the game, because your crew is actually shouting at you things that you probably need to be aware of. And also when you use the sort of in-game voice command system to say, like, we should attack Alpha Sector or whatever, your captain says that over the voice chom to the rest of your team, so that kind of creates a nice sense of place. Lovely ship designs. There's sort of 3 manufacturers and they look very different. Very Battlestar-y, little bit of sort of, bit of Eve in there as well. Bit of Homeworld. Looks nice. Things that I found a little bit more mixed so far. So, the community is a weird combination of, I found, quite off-putting, but also quite well spoken. So it wasn't the sort of like, Dota noise of just, rage. People seem to be kind of like happy to introduce themselves. And then, and this is totally anecdotal. I would stress that, like, this is based on, my first couple of hours of play with strangers. Everyone's sort of been like, sort of quite into it, but also like a bit shitty, about mistakes and like, why are you doing that and why are you going over there? And I've gone away and watched some YouTube videos and read some guides and stuff to try and make less stupid decisions, but it's not been very positive in that regard. So, I picked up.
Is it like a dinner party where no one really likes each other?
No, because at least
As opposed to where Dota is just like a food fight.
Yeah, it's snippy. It's snippy. You're not wrong. There's, so the other thing, so I'm reviewing the game, and as part of that, I got given a code for, I didn't know what it would give me. It's just a sort of like, load of booster packs and stuff, but it gives you like a starting ship, an extra ship at the start, and I think this might be the sort of like, the, starter pack they're selling for like 40 quid or something for when the game launches. And so in my first game, I decided to load in the ship that I didn't realize was the ship that came with the pack. And, it had a skin and stuff like that. And as soon as I picked it, people were like, oh God, can't believe people would pay to win in an alpha or whatever. And I looked it up and I found very few people complaining that the game is pay to win at all, actually. But, and I immediately felt mega self-conscious about being in this particular ship. And then I had quite a good game the first time around. It didn't feel like I had a good game because my guns did twice as much damage as anyone else's. It just went quite well. But my team were constantly shitty about it. Like I'd sort of bought my way in. I even said, when I was loading in, I'm new, I'm happy to play whatever people think the team needs. And no one said anything, so I picked my ship and they were like, well, fuck you. So that was a bit naff. The other thing, so eventually I went around and used some of the credits I got to buy a different ship based on reading around what I might enjoy. And it's a support ship, but it doesn't have an ability to heal. Some ships can heal each other. This one can purge negative effects from other ships around it. And I had a guy for the entire game that was going quite well, where I was playing that guy screaming at me to heal him. And as far as I can tell, I can't, because I literally don't have that ability. But I didn't feel confident enough in my knowledge of the game to say I couldn't be healing him. But I don't think I could have been. And he was so kind of aggravating because he was like, because it was by name as well. It was, my username. Why aren't you doing this? What the fuck is wrong with you? Kind of stuff. And it's just like, yeah. So that's been, so I really like the game actually, and sort of and I don't know how long I will stick with it necessarily beyond putting, hopefully enough time to get, a proper sense of it for review, although we'll work on that flexibly because it's in early access, so there's less of a time constraint on that. But, I wasn't aware of it, and given how long it's been around, maybe that's bad, but it's nice to discover a sort of multiplayer format that's blending this stuff that does feel genuinely different to anything else I've played.
What's the fracture?
I think that it's more like it's fractious. So you're all corpse, in the future, corpse, mega corpse.
Oh,
and they're doing,
I see.
You're all a corpse.
You're all one big corpse.
And you gotta go do the space war because there's mining.
Fucking mining.
Right.
You gotta get the ore.
Is this like that's happened with Call of Duty? Advanced Outer Space Warfare. Whatever that thing is.
They should just call it Call of Duty the Space one.
Yeah. Okay. But because they've been out in space too long and they've got weird about mining and protecting their asteroids. I remember this. I sat through a 50-minute presentation.
That's what it's like in space, for real. It's only a few generations away before we're at war over space rocks. Infinite war. Fair.
Oh, that's what it's called. Yeah, sure. Good. Yeah.
I would have bet on future warfare if I'd had to guess. Despite having watched a full trailer of this thing and heard about it many times.
Ghosts.
I just always think of Infinity Ward whenever they hear Infinite Warfare, and that's weird.
Yeah, that feels almost intentional.
Yes.
That's all of the space I've got to talk about today.
See, this has disrupted the system. We were going to go from you to Tom, and then back to you, and then on to me. There was a whole system. There was a process.
I didn't realise.
I didn't realize the protocol. This is why I don't host.
I've kind of got two things. So if you did go to me, then we could go to you, and then back to me.
But that would be ignoring the new system we've created.
Yeah, the new system.
Where you just talk about everything for ages.
Talking about space. Your games better be about space, otherwise they're not allowed in this theme.
All right. How about no rules?
Everyone talk at once.
Okay. What games have you been playing, Tom?
Just before this podcast, I frantically played a load of things because I hadn't played anything. Except Deus Ex a little bit. But I played, Wheels of Aurelia, which just came out today, Tuesday. Whatever. I've been very busy. And I'd seen it I'd only heard of it 2 days ago, Monday, Sunday.
Let's not try specifics.
And it's a game about where you are a woman driving along the coast of Italy on the Via Aurelia, which is apparently a route that people do.
Oh, is this the one that's set in the 70s?
Yeah. It seems like that kind of time.
30 years ago. 40 years ago?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. August.
And yeah, the trailer was just really sold me on it. It was, cool 70s music from Tuesday. Very like, I don't know, the visuals are nice. It looks like a model town on a coastline. And you kind of, are just like very flat shaded cars and buildings and stuff. And quite cartoonish trees. And you're zooming past these and it's just kind of like, when I saw it, I assumed the landscape was randomly generated because you kind of travel a lot of it seemed like. And I thought, wow, a whole game of that must be a huge amount of terrain. So, presumably they found a way to randomly generate it. And it was pitched as basically like a driving game, but what you're really doing as you're driving is having conversations. So it's like dialogue trees and then the driving is just kind of in the background. And it kind of is that. But it was a little bit surprising when I did play it. Like, the music is great, and the kind of, I wanted to play it because it's just so different to anything else that I could play. And I this is something I'd like to do in real life, is to drive along the coast of Italy, and talk to people, I guess. If there were people in the car, I guess I would talk to them. And, it's intriguing to see how they handled it. But neither part of it entirely works. Like, when you start it up, it's got like a how to play section, so I read that, and it says, you can press space to go faster, and you can press left and right to steer, but if you don't do any of those things, your car will just follow the road and just travel at a reasonable pace. It doesn't like stop or anything. So, it lets you concentrate on the conversation if you want to. And that sounded kind of cool. And the conversation, like up and down cursor keys go through your conversation options. And then weirdly, there's no way to select a conversation option. You just have to wait for the time to run out. Like it's a timed thing. And when you change your choice, the timer resets. So you just kind of get the one you want and then you just leave it on screen for like 3 seconds until it ticks away, which is like strange, but not a problem. But then weirdly, you don't really have any choice in almost any of the dialogue. I mean, maybe it's branching in some way, but your options will be just make the same point or ask the same question in 2 different ways. So someone says, I was in a like street race. We met some asshole and he challenged us to a street race. So we did the street race. And, while that was happening, the person who was with me, who was a girl I met at a disco, said that she really...
Time for a disco? You should be driving.
It's a leisurely drive. Like, you're intentionally... Apparently, this route is not the fastest route to wherever it is you're going. I don't think you even know where you're going. You're just driving for the fun of it. And so we started the street race, and like, she was... we'd already like cancelled plans to go to a restaurant together to do the street race, and like, my character was seemingly totally on board with it, because again, I didn't really have much choice. And she was somewhat on board with it. And then she really needed to go to the bathroom. And then my dialogue options were just like, oh, what's the matter? Have you scared a little challenge? Or, well, I have to finish this race or something. Like, the only 2 options are just to say no to her in 2 different ways. And that seemed to be most of the conversations. Like, you would always just have 2 different ways of saying the same thing.
So hang on, when you say, are you afraid of a challenge, you refer to the challenge of not weeing?
Yeah, 'cause it's strange because you're driving, so it's not like the race is a challenge for her.
No. Also, does she just wee in your car then?
That's not made clear. And then also, I don't know how much to say about the plot. I guess I'll try and avoid too many specifics, but, there's a conversation about a very particular topic to do with what's going on in her life, and, I had 2 options to ask her about 2 different things, kind of, and I asked one of them, and then the other one just kind of stayed on my dialogue tree, and so then when she was asking about something else, that was still an option. And then she would say something to me and I'd get 2 possible responses and I'd say one of them and the other response would just stay in my dialogue tree. And so from then on, anytime she asked me a question, my options would be like something that's relevant to what she just said or a reply to the previous thing she said. And then if I said that, when she talked back to me, I didn't know if she's responding to that or whether she's responding to the new conversation. So it felt like it got out of sync or something.
Was that a bug?
Yeah, it seems like a bug.
Okay.
And then the driving is, if you don't press any keys, you by no means drive smoothly. You'll crash into many things. So you kind of do have to maintain your speed. And then, the space thing is like you can't hold it down. You have to keep pressing it repeatedly to kind of get a little boost. And it's a very slight boost and you're very slow without it. And then, I was tasked with like chasing a car and I had to chase the orange car. And so I wasn't, like, that is told to you in a dialogue screen, which is cut away from the game, so you can't see anything on screen when it says, oh, there's an orange car, we've got to chase it. And then when it cuts back to the game, I was driving along and I saw an orange car, and I figured, well, if my thing is to chase the orange car, it must be the only orange car, right? If there's an orange car, there can't be more than one. As far as I know, that's true. I didn't ever see any other orange cars. But this one, even without speed boosting, I'm going faster than it. So I'm gonna like hit the back of it. And so I kind of like, I just went around it and thought, well, okay, I'll just go ahead of it for a bit to tail it. But then they make a big deal of like, oh, I think it's going to turn off at this other junction, but you're not sure. So I'm like, well, I kind of need to know before I reach that junction, right? So I need to get behind it again. But there's no way to slow down. So I had to just like, at first I tried crashing into other cars to slow myself down, but that doesn't slow you down. At least not enough to fall behind the orange car. So then I just had to like ram myself into the side of the road. And, you can even like go 180 and go back the other way for a bit. And in doing that, I collided with the orange car and the orange car went crazy, went super fast. And then I couldn't catch it even when speed boosting. And, that led to some quite serious consequences for my character. And then the game basically ended. And that was like 15 minutes. And I got ending, I don't know if this was like a score or whether it's just the code for the ending I got, but I got D. And apparently there are 16 endings. But it's...
Maybe D was for like dead or something.
Yeah.
Maybe the orange car.
I did die. I definitely didn't get a good ending. But in circumstances that were like, I don't know, felt very... and here's what actually happened to that character later in their life. It feels, has a lot of, the feeling of Mask, a game me and Graham have talked a lot about, on this podcast, where it's a kind of a very short melodrama where everything is very like broad strokes and, everyone says their feelings and, everything's extremely dramatic. Like everything that happens is extreme. And then it's very, very short, and then you replay it in theory to see all the other options. And like maybe every dialogue option I chose was taking me down a path, but like I looked at all the options each time, and most of the time it seemed like I had no choice. And then the only other choice you have is like whether to stop for a hitchhiker or whether to, sometimes there'll just be an exit, and do you take that exit or do you carry on the main road? But only like 3 times, I think. And I picked up one hitchhiker. I didn't pick up the other one because I was chasing the orange car at the time, and so it seemed like I had higher priorities. And I guess maybe like whether or not I successfully chased the orange car was the thing that I chose poorly on. So I guess those lead you down paths. I mean, clearly it has 16 endings, so there must be a bunch of choices that influence it. But it wasn't the kind of game where when I finished that I thought, oh yeah, I want to replay and see the other options, because I kind of did the things that I wanted to do. And the driving was like not fun, I wouldn't say. It's not like, it's automated enough that it doesn't feel physicsy or doesn't feel convincing. But it's not automated enough that you don't have to keep interacting with it to stop crashing into things. So it felt like felt like a cool idea, but each part of it was just done like 80% of the way. And the last 20% was kind of needed for it to really hang together. Like if you're only going to do driving and conversations, you should get at least one of those things like really right. But it is interesting. I think it was £6 or maybe £7, which maybe if you play it through a bunch of times, that ends up being good value. But I don't know if I can completely recommend it based on the 15-minute experience I had that didn't leave me wanting to play it again.
So is the point of it that you're trying to, well, you said you aren't trying to get to a place, but like, or in particular, so is it it's to explore that idea of like the conversations that you have while driving, or is it like, is there some other thing that you're experiencing, or that the game is sort of, I was going to say driving at, but that feels like a stupid pun, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, there was, I decided I was driving to France, and there was a time when I could have not said that, I think. It was like, shall we go to France or shall we, I don't know. I got to express like an opinion about Italy. Sometimes the way you choose things is very indirect, and so you just sort of, when I beat the guy in the street race, I wasn't presented a choice of whether to take his car or not, which is what we'd wagered on the race. All I could do was ask the person I was driving with, so do you think we should take his car? Or I could ask her, shall we stick with this car? Or I could ask her something else. And so by saying that, I was making the choice, because she just agrees with whatever you hint at, but it's phrased in a strange way. Yeah, so like, maybe not going to France would have had a different outcome. I didn't actually end up in going to France, because it's 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just the conversations really, and the choosing which route which turning to take.
Okay. What was the other game?
Well, do you want to talk about one of yours first? Or?
Oh, I've only played the one, and I'm still processing it. The longer I get before we talk about it.
Well, I also checked in with Hitman, because I haven't played it in ages.
How is he?
He's still bald and angry. Have you guys played the Bangkok?
I haven't yet. I sort of, it's interesting, like, I think, after having, like, had to miss one or two elusive targets, it became so much easier not to constantly be going back to that.
Yeah, I've had
game.
the same thing now. I had hit them all until I went to Sweden, and then I even did one in Sweden. But then I missed the next one because it was like a week later, and they just came so frequently that I couldn't keep up with it. And then, yeah, once you miss one, it's like, oh, well, no, I don't really care. And I haven't done any since. And then I even kind of didn't like rush back to it when there was a new episode. And I only played it briefly before I came here. It's really, really beautiful. It looks gorgeous. And they've done a good job of like continually finding different types of gorgeous locations. Like this is a very different one. It's in Bangkok, apparently. I've been to Bangkok and I've been to other places in Thailand. It reminds me much more of the other places in Thailand where like beautiful sandy beaches and tropical islands and, lovely hotels. Nearly everyone is like Cockney. It's incredibly British. Yeah, exactly. Which is weird. You're there to kill an indie rock star, who might have killed his girlfriend, and his lawyer because he's probably bad too. And it looks like another big, like, rich location with loads to do. It's like a huge hotel, and there was a mission in Hitman 1 that was a hotel, and it was cool, but like almost every room was locked, and there was just a few rooms you could go in, and I always remember thinking like, what? Imagine if you go in every room of this thing. And I think you can in this one. But I also kind of had a bit of fatigue with it. Like, it's that awkward thing of like, if you have the opportunities on and you follow them, it feels like you're just doing what the developers are telling you to do. And if you turn the opportunities off, then it feels like just blundering around and doing a lot of trial and error. And just realizing, like you walk into this location and then you find out, I'm not allowed to be here, and now everyone's angry. And trying to figure out, like, you just know so little when you start. Like, you don't know, where you're trying to get to. You can see the targets in your, like, x-ray vision, but, they're always in super public places, so you know you can't kill them there. And so the information about, like, when would they ever be in a position that it's viable to kill them in is something you're just going to have to learn by just waiting and blundering into different hotel rooms and figuring out where you can and can't be. And I sort of feel like if I keep playing it, I will end up really liking it like I did all the others. But right now I'm feeling a bit of fatigue with it. Like, it feels like they delivered on what I would have said I wanted, which is loads of big, rich locations with loads of different ways to do it. And they delivered on it so much and so frequently that I'm almost burnt out.
Yeah, the elusive targets really seemed to cluster up about a month ago, I think. So I think we were writing news about them when they came out because it felt like people would actually want to know if they were playing the game, but it did get really kind of, it's another Tuesday, here's an elusive target.
Yeah, I think it's like, if they were just updates to the game where they'd added something cool that you can play whenever you like, doing them that frequently would be kind of nice, because then whenever you check in, you got lots of things to catch up with. But when they're time limited like that, that's a lot of like pressure, and it's a lot to ask of your players. And so I don't know why they did them so frequently, because there were a lot of work for them to make as well, and they had other things to be making. And I felt like their frequency just went so extreme that it sort of pushed people out of it. Like, if they'd been slow enough for me to keep up with, I'd probably still be really invested in, like, I've got to get everyone, and I'll always do it.
I think also if they were slower, then it would give them opportunities to make them feel really different from one another. Whereas, like, the problem with the elusive target thing, and similar with the issue with the game as a whole, particularly when you're kind of exposed to, I think weirdly, when you're exposed to lots of different, slightly different iterations on it, rather than like big, massive new maps and stuff, is you start to see all the points of commonality between two targets that might be on paper completely different. But to be honest, the same rough approaches will vaguely work. Like, I've got to the point now in Sapienza where, with the elusive targets that have been there, I've killed them all in roughly the same way, because if they go outside at any point, I know where I can snipe them from.
Yeah.
And so that becomes a sort of, it's not necessarily a problem, and obviously I could challenge myself to do it creatively, and there's always that option. That feels like a little bit of a get out. Like, I've sort of learned what you can approximately get away with guards, what it takes to learn someone's pattern. And, I mean, even little things, like when they do those little intro videos for the elusive targets, that will show you some locations where the target will walk. And so by the end of that video, you probably know if you can do one of the really easy methods or not. And that's how I killed Gary Busey.
Yeah, I think that's the first one I missed, actually.
It was terrible.
It
worth searching on YouTube for the Gary Busey, like, banter as he walks around, because it's honestly some of the worst video game writing I've ever encountered, and easily some of the worst acting. It's appalling. Like,
do you think he wrote them, or?
No, it reads like, it's awful. It's like, I feel like I've spoken.
Gary Busey?
It's a guy with the big teeth. He's got big teeth and kind of a mad
But what's he been
look.
in? Would I know him?
I only know him, like, the things I can think of are, like, things where he's played himself.
Okay.
He's always, like, guest starring and things. Like, oh, fucking Gary Busey is here, and he's a lunatic.
It's like, I mean, that it is worth YouTubing. Maybe I'll put a link in the show notes, because it's so bad. There's like a joke at the expense of early access that someone's written for Gary Busey to say, which is just a weird series of shit decisions where at some point you had to go, no. Better use of time.
Is
the rest of the
Gary-
game is fine.
Is Gary Cole in it as well?
Yeah.
That's the other one, right?
Yeah, they have
So he's not your target, but he's still in it.
they have a very stilted conversation, which is the perfect time to shoot Gary Busey. But no, I haven't played Bangkok yet, and I'd like to, but at the same time, I think I'd rather see them do very different things with those missions, and so that you can maybe unlearn something you've learned about how best to cheese it, basically.
Yeah.
Maybe they could do a Halloween event where people are in costumes,
They did
like ghosts and things.
There's some Halloween stuff in the Paris map. You can dress up as a vampire.
There's a vampire magician, yeah.
Is it Halloween then?
No. I think it's just in the attic.
Is
like,
he just
disused.
a style blogger?
Yeah, maybe I should just, like, do the opportunities. Just follow all the ones I find through and just, like, play it like a sort of, by the numbers, experience a couple of times. And then once I know what the options are, like, get into the open-ended stuff. It's really weird because I think Paris is way better if you play it with the opportunities on, if you don't know it yet. And Sapienza is way better if you don't. So each time I've got to, like, guess, like, which is the actual way to play this?
Yeah, I found Morocco is rubbish with the opportunities. I really didn't, it's Morocco, isn't it? I really didn't enjoy that. Partly, and as a consequence, some of the things that are even sort of like ancillary to the opportunities, like a couple of the opportunities require you to make good use of the tunnel between the two, places where the targets are. And that area is very artificial feeling in the way that it's designed. Like, it feels very weird that there'd be a a tunnel, like with lots of sort of level designy sort of staircases and alcoves to hide in between two, arbitrarily different buildings, like a shop and an embassy in the same city. And also the guard placement and stuff is all designed around, I think, creating quite a structured challenge around those very specific, opportunities. So trying to do some sort of ad hoc solution sort of rubs up against the difficulty level set for a prescribed thing, which, doesn't quite work. But then again, Sapienza is fine for that stuff, and you can be presented with the opportunity, but still go about doing it your own way, which is the ideal, I think.
Yeah. The routes in Sapienza feel really, interesting. I always finding new places that are connected. Like, you can get from here to here. There's like, if you go in the sewer, you can get this way. Or there's a cliff path that takes you from here to here. Or actually that like closed fashion shop. If you go into there, then one of the exits gets you out in this other place. That's really fun. So what have you been playing, Pip? What's your one game?
I've been playing Virginia, which is the variable state, FBI story experience thing. It's not actually a very long game, but it's one which I'm glad I'm not reviewing it because I'm still waiting for it to sort of shake down a bit in my head.
But you finished it?
Finished it about an hour before we started recording. And it's that thing where it does some interesting things and it's really atmospheric and it invokes a lot of things that I've been interested in other formats, like the slightly, offbeat / kind of quasi-mystical / just plain weird thing plus FBI agents will obviously always draw parallels with Twin Peaks, but there's also sort of, it feels like it references the X-Files, in certain ways. Like, I won't go too much into like plot or anything because I think, one, that means I would have had to have reached a coherent decision on some of the elements of the plot. But also I think that's one of the things that people would probably prefer to go in blind to. But there's a bit quite near the beginning where you are given an assignment and you head all the way down to the bottom of the building to a sort of discarded bit of a disused part of the building and meet the agent that you are going to then be working with, and that obviously has so many sort of X-Files parallels. And then there's a mystery that you are working on together, but there's other stuff going on, and then you sort of get these repeated motifs and weird happenings and sort of dreamlike elements and things like that. Is it
an adventure game? Are you solving puzzles?
Kind of not really. I don't want to say it's not a game because that is obviously the wrong conversation to have, but it's far more along the spectrum of an interactive movie type experience or TV episode type experience, I would say. And so that is actually quite interesting because it does a thing which I don't think I've encountered in games that I can remember, which is that instead of having to perform all of the actions to get to a certain point, the game will sort of have you do enough of it to get a feel for it and then cut to the next thing. So I guess to use the going down to the basement of the FBI building as an example, you're in a lift and then you get out and you walk down a couple of corridors, but after a certain amount of time, instead of forcing you to sort of do the next bit of that, you're in a stairwell now and you go down a couple of the flights of stairs to get a sense of how far you're going and how down, how far down this thing is, but then it cuts to the basement itself and you're sort of just arriving and things like that. So
sounds a bit like 30 Flights of Loving.
I haven't played that.
Well, 5 Flights of Loving, then a cut. Now you're in the basement.
Just in the sense of having a first-person narrative experience that has a bit of a sort of montage quality to it, because it cuts between stuff.
Okay, yeah. And so there's a lot of that and a lot of there's no dialogue. It's all sort of through movement and through music and through, sort of environmental storytelling, really. And so a lot of that is really interesting, and it's got a very particular art style which kind of put me in mind of a far brighter jalopy. So there's that element to it. There's a lot of the sort of the classic American police procedural scenes as well. There's like small town diners and coffee and, all these other bits and pieces. But I think it's one of those things that's going to, when I've made up my mind as to whether I liked it or what I think it was doing, will probably come down to whether I think that the confoundingness goes somewhere interesting or does something interesting or has something to say, or whether it just veers over into incoherence.
Right.
So
that is also a very David Lynch thing to be wondering. I've definitely had that with various David Lynch films where some of them make more sense than you think at first. Like Mulholland Drive, there's a kind of really neat sort of way of interpreting it that does make it all tied together, but when you watch it the first time, at least for me, I was just like, oh, it's a series of unconnected images.
I think Empire had an amazing diagram of how Mulholland Drive kind of works if you view it in this kind of weird mathematical format that goes round in a big old circle, I think. But yeah, so, and that's not to sort of shy away from judging it. It's more that I think I need another playthrough to work out whether I think it's done what it thinks it's done, or if it's fallen into the trap of just putting a lot of things together and it not quite coming off in the way that is rewarding for the player. There's also the thing where, so towards the very end, the montaginess actually really steps up a notch, and I felt like I was in the world's longest crescendo of plot, and then it just, it went on for uncomfortably long, because I was sort of expecting it to have built to a point, but then it sort of kept going, and I was like, hang on, what, have we ended? Have we not ended? Okay, there's more. Okay, fine. So.
Is the montage of things you play? Or?
As in the, that cutting between.
Yeah. But you're in control.
So, one of the reasons that I'm saying it doesn't feel quite like a game in the traditional sense is that I would need to sort of compare notes with somebody else who's playing it, but I didn't feel like anything I did changed anything. It was more just about moving to the position in the corridor that would push me through to the next montage section, or I would find a thing that I then needed to interact with, and that would be the thing that ended the scene or that sort of brought about the next step. But I don't, as far as I know, there wasn't anything where, or I couldn't tell that there was anything where I'd picked one option and that had taken anything in a different direction. It was very much, it felt very linear, and I think that's a thing that games still haven't quite worked out how to deal with the problem of, because players sort of naturally play around with things a bit, and so there was a bit where I was in a lift, and everybody else who'd been in the lift got out, and I wanted to see whether the doors would close and I could go somewhere else if I waited, but I stood there for ages and nothing happened. The doors stayed open. Like, I couldn't press any buttons. I couldn't do anything. And eventually I got out and instantly the doors close and ping, and then there it's gone. And so, you know, there's little things like that, or like there were, a few interaction options that were just, you know, sipping coffee while you watched other things happen around you. But I found myself, because the interactions that you have with the world are so sparse in a way, you notice them more, and so little things like the fact that the level in the coffee cup wasn't going down started to like really stick out to me, or the fact that my character's shadow at one point like should have had a briefcase and didn't. You know, it was little things like that obviously they're not game breaking exactly, but when your options for interaction are so few, you do start taking in more of the surroundings and sort of looking at that stuff in a bit more detail, and occasionally it would, I guess, fall by the wayside. So, yeah. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. It was an interesting experience, and I think it's one of those things where I'll probably just be glad that it existed and have days when I think that it was better and days when I sort of think that it was worse, I guess. But I think I'd like to talk to, because I know Adam at work has played it, so I'd really like to sit down and talk to him about it. But I think the biggest thing for me right now is I finished playing and I had a really bad headache. I was like, wait, what?
Sounds terrible. Gives you a headache.
So,
games that like stick with you for a while afterwards are interesting. I think Transistors were the last game that did that, where I knew I liked it, but I also liked the plot part of it. I just kept thinking about it for ages afterwards, without, not necessarily in like, wow, that was a brilliant way, but just kind of like, you know, reassessing it and mulling it over.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely value to that. And like I say, I am glad that it exists. I think it's just one of those things where, I think when I said I'd finished playing it, one of my other colleagues said, "Oh, is it good?" And I was like, I cannot answer that question. Ask me in a while. And a few ibuprofen later, you know? So yeah.
How long did it take you, out of interest?
I don't know, because I kept needing to stop because headachiness. So I would like take quite a lot of screen breaks, or, you know, switch focus to something else, which possibly didn't help with a couple of the coherence things. But I think it's, you know, a kind of couple of hours kind of game. So, yeah. But, and I'm also sort of, I'm hoping that having more games like this will help us find ways to talk about games that are more sort of diverse and broad, and sort of that bring in things that sit maybe a bit more uncomfortably on the edges, or bleed into things like TV or film a bit more.
Yeah. I like the idea of the, like, do something a little bit and get the idea of it, and then it just cuts forwards to now you've done that thing.
Yeah, especially because there's no
games
sprint.
That would benefit. Yeah.
You're just like, oh my god, oh wait, no, we're here.
So one of the good things about that is it means you can make a game where the main character doesn't run everywhere. Because that's something games do struggle to convey, is like walked distance, because no one wants to walk, but that's kind of how humans get places.
I couldn't tell on Wheels of Aurelia whether like the car is weirdly slow, or whether I'm just thinking in video game terms, where usually if I'm driving a car, it's like a sports car that I'm like driving flat out, and whether it just seems slow from that perspective.
Well, it's interesting because, like, you know, talking about the, you know, driving and conversations genre that was dominated by Grand Theft Auto, which is honestly, like, that is a game about driving and listening to a story that you're being told by someone you're in the car with. Obviously you don't make choices, but, you know. But those games' conversations are kind of timed around the amount of time it will take when you're driving, like, the world's most dangerous driver. Like, you're herring down the wrong side of the road because it's faster. Like, you know, weaving in and out of traffic, jumping over, you know, embankments, and sort of like, you know, going as far as the crow flies as you possibly can, while someone sort of exposits to you from the passenger seat. Whereas if you try and play those games sort of like properly and obey the traffic law and stuff and all the rest of it, the conversations often end uncomfortably early, and you're left driving safely in awkward silence.
A game that does driving and conversations kind of interestingly is Deadly Premonition.
Yeah.
That has, that handles that really interestingly, I would say.
Are you driving?
So, yeah,
Like
you are,
controlling
and
the
the car itself is the worst. It's like driving a supermarket trolley that has been, devoid of at least 2 wheels and really wants to go somewhere completely different. But, that, I guess it's part of the plot as well, but, there's just, it does interesting things, and you sort of find yourself wanting to drive around a bit more just to see what it triggers in terms of, the chatting that the protagonist does. So that's kind of cool, actually. But yeah, what you were saying earlier, just 'cause it was a thought that came into my head, was, about this is totally off the topic, so I'm very sorry, but with the Hitman, Bangkok stuff and how the, following the, what are they called? The objective things?
Opportunities.
Yeah, the opportunities and stuff. It kind of reminded me of a thing that I was thinking in terms of in terms of Virginia, which is, games where you're playing a detective and the game has to sort of work out how many options to give you in terms of investigation, or the items that you can pick up, or the drawers that you have access to and stuff. It's kind of a different version of that same problem, I guess, is 'cause in the FBI, I guess you would know what you were looking for or what you were allowed to look for or whatever. But so in Virginia, it kind of takes it completely the far extreme where you can only interact with the thing that you are allowed to interact with. But, if it was actually me, I'd just be like, okay, well, everything, I guess, because I have no idea what I'm looking for and I have no idea what I'm allowed to do. And then you get games that sit in that weird middle spot, L.A. Noire, where it was there are 3 things that are relevant and 3 things where you will just turn it over in your hand for a while, like a weirdo. So, I don't know, it only popped into my head because it had popped into my head when I was playing Virginia, when I was actually thinking, I don't know what it's, 'cause I think that was the other thing that I meant to say, was that there is a certain element of it that turns into pixel hunting a bit, just because you know that your cursor changes a little bit when you see the thing that you're allowed to interact with. And so, you sort of quickly get disincentivized from investigating other bits, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, that was
not many games have done that well, I think. It's an unsolved problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of montage-y style can work really well if it's seamless, and that's the hidden skill of 30 Flights of Loving, is that it flows really nicely, and very rarely or if ever, do you get the opportunity to break that flow by not quite finding the right corridor to walk down or whatever.
Actually,
a skill.
There's a game called Fitzpackerton, which is, Brendan Chung also worked on, with, Teddy Diefenbach? Is that how you say it? I've never had to say his surname out loud before. And a few others. That is, instead of, it does still borrow from cinema, but the thing it most reminded me of was a play, because it is a montage and it's about, it's a really good, Reservoir Dogs style piece where it's everything but the heist. And in particular, the name it refers to the fact that all of the scenes in it are you packing things. So you're packing a bag to prepare for the heist, then you're packing the trunk of the car, and then you're packing money into the bag, and then after the heist, other things. And so it's very clever in the way that it tells you all of the key story points by reducing them down to that activity. But also the transitions between scenes are, you're packing this bag on a table, and then when you finish packing the bag on a table, the table just is pulled away into the side of the room, and the lights around you're in a pool of light in a kind of dark area, and so all the props are kind of pulled away, and then new props are just slotted in. So it never cuts away. You're always just still in the same place, and just things are taken out and put in, which is exactly like in a play when the lights go down and it's not completely concealed. You still see the guys in black running in and just taking away the props and bringing in new props and stuff. And you're not supposed to, they're not trying to completely pretend that doesn't happen. But you're just sort of, your attention is drawn to the scene and then to the next scene. And that was a really interesting thing to do in a video game where it's the easiest thing in the world to just teleport those things out and teleport the new things in.
I see that working really well in VR. To have a contiguous experience where you're not disorientating the player by fading fully to black or something. And people sort of are aware of what's happening around them.
Yeah, also loading screens in VR are terrible.
Yeah.
Can't remember if I mentioned this before, but like when you in the Valve's lab thing, which is great, it's a whole load of different experiences, but every time you go to a new one, that goes to a loading screen. And all of that, like, in the same way that a simple experience can be way more immersive and engaging in VR, like, let's say it's 70% more engaging because you're so much more immersed. Loading screens are 70% more painful because you're so immersed in the fact that you can't do anything.
Maybe they should have like a thing like, in cartoons when a character gets like hit on the head or something and they have the Tweety birds like flying around them in a circle. Maybe you should just see this procession of birds as if you've been, mildly concussed for a few seconds.
I think maybe one of the reasons, it feels like it takes longer than it normally would to load a game scene. And I think one of the reasons is that you can still move your head around. There is a big loading screen, but it's not a static thing fixed to your eyes. It is a physical wall in the world. And so as you look around, your computer is having to do a whole lot of processing power to make sure it's still maintaining 120 frames per second, on two different screens, one for each eye.
Maybe it could physically tell you to shut your eyes for 2 seconds.
Just hang on.
You don't want to see what's going to happen next.
That's the thing that always gets me, because sometimes, like, different games do it differently, but in some cases the loading screen will always be in front of you based on where you're facing when you do the thing that triggers the loading screen.
Right.
But sometimes it will be on a fixed part of the room, and that can create some really, the same is also true for like games in VR that weirdly have intro videos or like, publisher splash logos and stuff. And you have the weird experience of going like, why has it all gone black? And then you realize that the loading screen is behind you. And you turn around, oh, there it is. Like, there's the Valve logo, or there's the, here's the NVIDIA video splash bit for this game. Oh, it was behind me the entire time. Like, it's a strange way of interacting with that stuff.
If they can do it, I would much rather, like, all the visuals went black and then they just play some audio stuff. Like, for Valve stuff, they have loads of voice clips for just, an announcer just talking about what's going on in the lab and kind of reporting on your activities and stuff. And that would be, I don't need visual stimulus at every single second. And particularly if you don't have anything to show me, I don't want to see a loading screen, especially. But if you can just play some voice stuff, that's moderately diverting. Yeah. I suppose the problem is it would have to be like a fixed length, and so, yeah, but you can always do that thing where like once it's loaded, you press any key to continue or whatever.
They could do a really creepy thing like pretending that someone's come up behind you and put their hands over your eyes.
Oh my god. That'd be horrible.
The creepy surprise loading screen. It's the worst loading screen.
Oh, I like my ideas. Although they are really creepy. Like, did I mention this on the podcast before about my idea for a peripheral that just lightly touches the back of your neck when you're playing a horror game in VR?
It does sound like the worst possible thing.
The thing is, I hate horror games. I would hate this.
Yeah, it seems like you would hate this.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I told this story either, but when I first tried the bit of the lab where you get to just go to like a mountain and look around it a bit, and there's a little robot dog that you can throw sticks for, and it's really cute. When the robot dog ran towards my leg, I felt it against my leg and just jumped out of my skin, and it turned out it was just the cable from the headset that just touched my leg. But Jesus Christ, is it terrifying when something in VR touches you in real life.
It's okay if it's a little robot dog though. If anything's going to cross over.
Yeah, I mean, I jumped out of my skin and it was a friendly robot dog I knew I liked and could see coming towards me. Imagine if it was coming out of nowhere.
Oh, God.
Let's apologise for the helicopter.
Yeah.
What a loud helicopter.
Wow.
Boring a hole in reality so that the robot dog can enter.
Maybe the robot dog is driving the helicopter.
Let's all hope. On its hunt for
dog
Tom.
Could drive a helicopter, I reckon.
To lightly brush my leg. But if it's trying to do that while in the helicopter, I will die.
The weirdest thing, so that was one of that mountain thing was one of the demos that I showed my mum when I got her to use the Vive. Because it's a good one for that, because, it's not abstract.
Yeah, my mum liked it. It's a mum pleaser.
But like, I was looking at the screen, so I had the mum-pleasing mountaintop.
They need this for the John Lewis crowd.
Yeah.
For the Oculus.
Eat a cake.
Eat a little cake, have a little mountaintop experience. But so I was, showed her that, and I showed her how to move around and stuff, and she's like, wow. I was like, Mum, if you look down, you'll see, is it a little robot dog? And she wasn't impressed at all. Like, oh, whatever. Back to looking at that. I thought that'd be the more impressive thing about the mountaintop, but no, if anything, that was, you can throw sticks for it.
But she's got
Why
a
would
real
I do that?
dog.
Yeah, exactly. Don't need it. Yeah, no, fair enough.
She hasn't got a mountain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
My mum liked the dog a lot.
We've got different mums.
I think my dad liked the views the most.
We'll check in next week for more.
We need to trap my parents in VR and see what they make of it, I think. I think my mother would probably be a little disoriented. I mean, she still refers to the GameCube as GameSphere, so...
That's a geometry problem.
It's like Plato would have a lot to say about this. Oh, well. Shall we do questions from questions?
Okay, sure, let's do that.
Cool. You need to do this bit of the hosting.
Okay.
I'm too far away.
Yes. Read from the monitor at a great distance, Pip. Okay.
Blah, 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 is what it looks like from here.
That's words.
That's number
First question, and also probably the first name I'm going to butcher. Laurent? What's the French? Laurent. Okay. Sorry, Laurent.
Maybe. I can't read it from here.
I've had
it could just be Stuart.
Whiskey with fruit in it.
Yeah, we have blackberry whiskey made by Pip, which is very cool.
Very strong.
Yeah.
Dear Crate and Crowbar podcast crew, I've been struggling with my Steam backlog for a number of years now. My Steam account doesn't have a lot of games compared to what I assume more avid or rich pursuers of this hobby have, or people with press accounts for that matter. He says he owns or have the license to use about 300 to 400 games on Steam. But I still cross the number of games that it is possible to reasonably play and enjoy to each of their fullest in any reasonable length of time. Most of this has come from Steam sales, where the thought, I'll enjoy this someday when I get around to it, so I might as well get it now for this price, because I'll go back to normal price, etc., takes hold. As the years went by and the Steam sales cycle repeated, this line of thought evolved into, okay, so I'll give myself 50 quid on my Steam wishlist, my Steam wallet this sale, and use it to get whatever's on my wishlist that I judge as a reasonable price for a Steam sale, etc. A byproduct of this evolution of thought, which you may or may not want to discuss, is never buy anything at full price unless you really, really want it. Just wishlist it, forget, and buy it later when it's on sale. The very latest evolution of this thought, which came to me after I realized I'd probably never achieve even 90% installed attempted to play rate on my list of games, is that I can someday pass my games on to my currently 5-year-old son, who is busy wide-eyedly discovering Disney Infinity, Minecraft, the various Lego games, and screaming hysterically at Goat Simulator. Either by passing on my login info, or if it's possible in some way, then actually bequeathing it to him. At least then maybe some of these purchases wouldn't have totally gone to waste. What do you guys do about your backlog situations? Does being professional game reviewers, players, talking about games change the way you view your backlogs compared to the average consumer? And what are your thoughts on the possibility of leaving your Steam account to a chosen loved one after you're gone? Would this be a good thing to be able to do? Would Valve and other distributors be open to it? Or would the industry resist? Lol, of course they will. How do digital games compare legally to other possessions that are able to be included in people's wills? Thank you for reading, and if you do, answering. And we will.
Yeah, I think, I suspect they won't let you transfer games.
You can't.
But, he's right that you could just give someone your login details and now they have your account. If the reason you're giving it is because you don't need it anymore, because you're dead. It would be weird, wouldn't it, to sort of log out of your Steam account to log into your dead parents' account to play their games.
Yeah.
But I guess you could do it if you really wanted that.
You need like,
cool
it needs to become
wanna
like
pay
an
the $5.
ancestral Steam account. An actual heirloom.
Yeah.
Well, you could also just authorize with the sharing, the family sharing thing, authorize the use of it on a particular PC and then just, maintain that for as long as possible. But
you have to, someone has to be logged into it on the network, right?
So what you do is you request access from the account that you want to have things shared with. Mm-hmm. And then in the original account, you accept that request. And I think you have to authorize a particular PC, but I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've done it, but yeah. So that's kind of interesting.
It's fun. It's a weird question to look at Steam and say, okay, which of your features are viable for dead people?
I think it's none of them, because the Steam terms and conditions are about, essentially the terms and conditions stipulate that you don't pass on your login information for anybody because it's supposed to be confidential. But it's also that I can't remember the exact wording for Steam, and I don't think they've changed it, but it's, the last time I looked, it's like a non-transferable license essentially to use the things, and once you stop using that service, it's not a license that you own in a meaningful way to pass on to anybody else. There are games that do have allowances for things like that. I think Linden Labs have something for Second Life where you can bequeath, I don't know if it's whole accounts, I think you can bequeath certain things to people, maybe. And I think there's also been a bunch of interesting legal cases about things like email and photography accounts and stuff like that, in terms of, I've written an actual thing about this, so it might just be better to put the thing in the show notes, because that will have actually gone through, I discussed it with lawyers and things to actually make sure that it was correct at the time. But there's different concepts of different digital assets and whether they're understood to be property or not in relation to law. And it's it's such a young field and it's still evolving, but a lot of things, the default response is that you are licensing a thing and you have a non-transferable right to that for the duration that you are using or paying for or subscribing to that service. And it's more legible with stuff where you're paying maybe a monthly subscription fee, to Spotify or to PlayStation Plus or something, because you know that it's a per month thing, and as soon as you stop, you stop having the right to that content. But with things like iTunes libraries and things, it becomes a lot fuzzier, and it's only when you actually read through the end user license agreements and things, which nobody really does, is when you find out that that's where all of these subtleties or these definitions and things are hidden. But obviously it's sort of only if people find out, and it's if somebody has to petition someone because the password no longer works, or, if there's two-step authentication and the phone number is no longer being maintained, then, you lose access to things. Yeah. Sorry, that's, I apparently quite know a lot about that, so.
In terms of how we feel about our backlogs, personally mine is, so I do have a press account that has changed what it means at some point. It used to be that if you have a press account, you just automatically own everything on Steam, which is ridiculous. Or developers could opt in or out to that, so they could decide whether you own their things, but most of them said yes. These days, you have to press a button to say, yes, give me this thing for free.
Add to my account.
Cause I'm not actually I don't press that button because it feels sleazy to do it. So I buy things, but I have a company and I can legitimately claim that it's research. And so I buy it through my company, which means I save 20% basically. So that means I can be a bit more free and easy about buying stuff without being absolutely sure I'm going to love it. And I do definitely have way more stuff than I can ever play. I just, I don't see it as a giant list of things where I've got to play them all. I much more see it as every now and then someone will mention something and I realize, oh shit, I own that. I should and I'll put it in my favorites. My favorites is not actually my favorite games. It's just things that I've recently realized I should play. And so I still haven't played it, but lately several people have mentioned Alpha Protocol in the last like month or so, and that's a game I never played at the time, but sounds like really like my kind of thing, and so that's in my favorites list at the moment, and at some point I'll install it. And Transistor is back in there because I was talking about it recently, and also I made a game that where you could I think I mentioned it before, like my hex-based, turn-based game where each tile is a different weapon inspired by Imbroglio. And the thing that's different with mine is that any one of those can be combined with any other one. And so each one has its own function, but also when it's used as an upgrade has a different function. And each combination of upgrade and original thing has a different way they combine, which is how Transistor works, and something I loved about Transistor. And just talking about it made me realize, shit, I want to play Transistor again.
I used to worry about it, and I used to buy things in Steam sales, which I don't anymore. And I used to sort of have this sense that I will get round to playing whatever RPG series I'd not got around to or something like that. And I used to believe that some of that stuff was sort of professionally mandated, that like everybody should know about these games and stuff. And I do not feel that way anymore. I don't have a press account, so, I've just sort of written off the expense of a lot of those games that I've picked up and never played. Maybe at some point I'll get around to them, but, most of them aren't, Dota, so I probably won't.
It's interesting to hear, this person say that they basically buy everything in sales and don't buy anything at full price. Cause I think I still buy almost everything at full price. Cause usually either, if it's not something like Alpha Protocol where it's been out for ages and I'm only paying it because someone mentioned it recently, and in that case, it's also usually not on sale because, the reason they're mentioning it is not related to its price. But the rest of the time I want to play things when they come out because everyone's talking about them. Like, that's the biggest factor in making me play something is, oh, my friends are talking about this, so I want to be playing it so that I can, also talk about it, or if they're saying it's great, I want to know whether I agree with that, and stuff like that. And for some reason that's like way more valuable and appealing to me to be playing something whilst other people are playing it, whereas coming to it years later when no one else is playing it, I'm much less likely to actually get around to it.
I think the conversation is a valuable part of the experience. I think I was talking to Graham about this, about feeling like you've missed the boat with some games and that the conversation was an equal part of the experience. And so because you've missed that, it would have to be something really special to entice you into considering the game again. But to answer the person's question, like, I think I just don't even consider my Steam library as a backlog. It's more that these are a selection of things that I picked up for various reasons, and they're there if I want them. And I think I also have a couple of other things that help with that, which is that I don't believe that you need to finish a game to have got something out of it. I don't get hung up anymore on the fact that I haven't finished a thing. Like if I played an hour of it and got something from it, or just knew that I didn't want to spend another minute with it and just finished and uninstalled it or whatever, then that's fine. And the other thing is just that if something was a neat idea enough for me to want to pick it up, then the developer will have got some money from it, even if I never play it. And obviously part of the act of creating is that you want to communicate whatever you're doing to someone else. But, the financial side of things isn't to be underestimated. So, even if there's, and I know there are a good many beefy games in there that people rave about that I just have never played and probably won't, but, the developer's still got some money from it and some support, and the fact that they did the work isn't going unacknowledged.
Sometimes when I meet someone who knows Gunpoint, they'll say, oh, I bought that, but I haven't played it. I'm sorry. I'm like, don't be sorry. You bought it.
That's perfect.
So yeah, I don't know. It's one of those odd things as well, because I think I don't really buy as much anymore either. or if I do, it'll be on a whim or because something is, like it has caught my eye and it's only £1 anyway because it was an experimental indie game, or, someone is almost like a sketch rather than a game, So I guess that helps. But yeah, I mean, I've got, what is it, Divinity Original Sin that we kind of started playing, and I know that Chris knows it really well and, has enjoyed it, but for me it was like, it just didn't, I think I never quite got into the experience in the same way, and so I think we played about 4 hours of it and then it just quietly disappeared off to the side, and I really just don't feel bad about that.
Yeah, the fact that I have so much to play has made me, if I've played something and I stopped playing it, not like, half full because I hated it, but just because I played it a bunch and then for some reason, when I last stopped playing it, I did not get the urge to go back to it. Now I'm pretty ruthless about that. I'm just like, okay, my time with that is done. So like Fallout 4, I never completed. Divinity is another one, Pillars of Eternity. Like all those games I liked, I didn't stop them because I was annoyed with them or anything. I just, at some point I stopped playing them and then I didn't go back. And for a while I was like, oh shit, I got to get back to that because it was kind of good. But now I think, well, it had its chance. If it didn't totally engross me, then I might as well move on to something else.
I think I just feel like I bought myself a bunch of options, and that's quite a nice feeling as well sometimes, is just knowing that you have a whole selection of things to play for whatever mood you happen to be in. And then if it ends up being, a particular thing all over again, or if it ends up being that I'm watching a Netflix series and just leave, I don't know, Adventure Capitalist running in the background because I find the numbers soothing. Like that's, I'm okay with that. I don't know if that helps. I hope that helps.
Paul writes, Dear Crate and Crowbar, !
Ooh.
Exciting. My wife is amazing in every way, Paul writes, except that she hates video games. I was never able to build a gaming rig until my son asked for one, so we built it together. Today I just did the unthinkable. I went behind my wife's back and ordered a Vive. How do I explain my way out of this expense, and how do I convince her that this is more important than my son's college education? More importantly, what VR experience should I show her first to help smooth over this high level of deception? What are all your favourite VR experiences thus far? Thanks. And as always, keep up the great pod. My son and I listen every week.
I think your son will totally back you up on this once he's tried the Vive. If he doesn't already back you up on this, he will once he's tried the Vive.
I wonder if
Alex,
you could make... Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I wonder if you could make the argument that, no one can afford college education without getting into massive debt anymore. So, what's a Vive on top of that? Sorry.
Alex Wiltshire, who's been on the podcast many times, he and his son came over to try the Vive, and it may have been a terrible idea on his behalf because now, his son Jack is always on at him to get a Vive. I don't know if he has yet, but I get the impression that it's a lost battle. Like he's never gonna be able to resist the endless demands for a Vive. And all Jack wanted to play was like Job Simulator. He just wanted to work in an office and pick up a stapler and throw it at his co-workers.
So this is maybe the perfect argument, is that, if you want your son to fly through college straight into that, 9-to-5 job, then
he's been fantasizing about it for years.
Exactly.
Work in an office and possibly throw his equipment at other workers.
Well, we did establish earlier that we got, Valve's, the lab has some mum-approved mountaintops, and opinions vary on the dog.
Yeah, that's a good one to show, just to kind of wow people. Its limitations are also pretty obvious. I mean, my mum liked it because she likes traveling, and you can like jump to all these different places, and I think that's kind of impressive. It's just like, now you're in a cave in Iceland, and now you're in a town square in Venice. But yeah, I think the lab is a good showcase of just a whole bunch of different things that Vive can do. I think Budget Cuts is probably the best, like, sort of gamey game, but then if his wife does not like games, then that's not a great demonstration.
A lot depends on he doesn't specify on what grounds she doesn't like games. And
maybe she hasn't tried Dota yet.
That'll be it, yeah, she'll love Dota.
Well, I was gonna say, if the grounds for not liking games isn't, like, maybe it's aesthetic or maybe it's something like that, but if it's, like, what are they for, then there is a lot of good sort of like mind-expanding educational stuff. Most of it to do with space, but like nonetheless.
Oh, Tilt Brush might be a good one. That's very. I think you've just like you take a controller in 3D space and you draw a line of glowing light around you. That's a really amazing experience for pretty much anyone. Doesn't have anything to do with how much you like video games.
Back to Mountains, the Everest VR experience might be worthwhile as well, because that's something you can point to and say, well, here's an approximation of an experience you're almost certainly never going to have.
To be fair, I would say that is disproportionately expensive for what it is. So if he's trying to argue about not wasting money on VR, then
how much is it?
I think it's 20-something quid, and it's a tech demo.
Right.
So
Yeah, well,
or at least that's my opinion.
Crytek demo.
wow.
Good reception to that one, I thought.
It was icy.
Oof. I thought it was hilarious.
Oh God.
Wait, what?
Oh, hang on, that's the wrong dude, isn't it?
No,
No, it's not, is it?
Who's
the
Hillary?
Hillary Step is part of Everest.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Oh, right.
And
I was still thinking about Crytek, and I was like,
Oh, I got a little bit tensing in here.
is it Crytek?
I was
Or is
too
it Unreal?
yearly with that joke.
Oh God.
Oh no. Abandon the question.
Oh God. Yeah, make it stop. I don't know.
Okay.
Pretend
Russ,
it's a paperweight. I don't know.
The Vive?
Yeah.
Or Everest?
I don't know. I'm grasping now for helpful additions.
don't worry, there's another option, and it's escaping the question for greener pastures, but I hope that helps.
Yes.
But we're not responsible if it doesn't. Russ writes, hi, Crates and Crowbars. I'm a recent convert to your podcast, having heard about it on the PC Gamer UK podcast, which is a sort of weird historical time loop fulfilling itself there.
What's a piece
Are
of
they
gamer?
advertising us?
Well, I think, I was on it, and I think we mentioned it. So, given that this podcast came out of the PC Gamer UK podcast once upon a time, there's a sort of strange cyclicalness to that. I was wondering if there were any game genre you have real difficulty playing, not because of something specific in the game, but rather just a mental block when it comes to that kind of game. For example, I have a huge problem with any game that is a 2D platformer. I think this is because I'm old enough that I used to buy my copy of Zap 64 magazine by getting in my car and driving to the newsagent. Back then, a lot of games were 2D platformers like Jet Set Willy, Monty Mole, Cuthbert, In the Cooler, Impossible Mission, etc. And I have exhausted my interest in any 2D jumpy, climby, falling shenanigans. So much that I can't contemplate playing one today, not even if the developer promised me £1,000 for finishing it. What computer game genre is your nemesis? Russ.
I have absolutely no interest in CRPGs. I just don't care, and the art style really puts me off as well. But I don't know if it's a cause, like, what's the cause and what's the effect there, because I don't know whether it's because I don't get on with CRPGs that I don't like that particular art style, or whether, yeah.
Is CRPG something like Pillars of Eternity, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just really don't like the busy work. I don't like the navigation. I really don't like the artwork, and they just drag on and they force you to be in a world that I don't like for an inordinate amount of time. So there's no real way of breaking down any of that resistance, because it just feels like, okay, well, here's a thing that you don't like and you can't have a bite-sized portion of it and try and reacclimatize. So here's 100 hours or nothing.
I think MMOs in some ways are this for me, because there are so many that are sort of promising in so many other ways. Like, there are so many MMOs where I love the theme or the fantasy or the art style or everything about it, but then I play it and it's an MMO and I've just got to grind some stuff and it's just going to be kind of tedious. I did get into Guild Wars 2 for a while, and then I kind of petered out, and I don't really know why. I think mostly like the social side of it ends up never really clicking with me, and most MMOs are kind of the kind of games where if you're just going to play it on your own, you can, but it's not that great compared to like a game where the combat feels really good. So like I was talking about Star Trek Online earlier, and I hadn't thought about that game in years, but thinking back on it, like so many of the kind of systems and ideas of that seem so good. And just in practice, it wasn't that much fun, cause it was just kind of grindy. But I love the idea of having like a crew on my starship who will have their own abilities that like give the starship cool abilities. And then I beam down on a planet and take them with me, and we get to like have cool, adventures down on the planet's surface. And Wildstar, I really loved the world of that game. And I did enjoy it. Like I played it at preview, as part of my job. And when I'm being paid, I sure like playing that game. But then when it's like, whether I actually want to carry on playing it in my spare time, I didn't really.
I really liked Wildstar, but everybody else, like once press access stopped being the default and people stopped being in review mode and dropped off with the game, there wasn't anyone left for me to play with. And so I found it just too hard to form replacement bonds, I guess. And so I actually ended up dropping off with that game, which is, probably the opposite of what you're saying. But I was just wondering whether you mind grind in other contexts in games, or if because I'm just wondering whether it's that very specific MMO materials grind.
It's almost always really because the combat doesn't feel good, and so having to repeat that. The sort of addictive hooks and stuff can be addictive for me if I'm also enjoying the moment to moment thing, and in most MMOs I'm not. It's because it's so lag proof. It has to be very kind of disconnected and very like about progress bars and pressing number keys.
You might like Destiny.
Yeah, maybe I would. I've never played it. Whereas, I forgot what I was going to say. Whereas games that are not MMOs do not have this problem.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
I think in my case, the games are definitely bounced off. Like when you get to like the hardcore end of grand strategy, they're the games I really want to like, but struggle like, and the stuff that I'll probably never get my head around, like Hearts of Iron, that kind of sort of war game.
You don't like any of the puzzle games that I play either, really.
I do see the appeal. Yeah, I suppose, number-based sort of puzzle games, my brain can't do. I don't think there's anything, it's not that I see them and don't really get the appeal, or that I've grown sick of them from overexposure. That's just a full on, it's not how I would choose to spend my time because it makes my brain need to learn things. And if I wanted to do that, I'd build a time machine and force myself to relive those years of education again. But that's impossible, thank God. And to do that, I'd need a maths degree, probably.
Cyclical problem.
Yeah, exactly. So, thank God, basically. But than that, even I can think of, even in the genres I really don't play, like sports games and cartoony 3D platformers, I can think of examples of games that I've played and liked. So, quite agnostic, really. I will play anything once. Apart from League of Legends.
You can play League of Legends with me.
No, that was a joke.
I'd get to tell you how it works.
You click the little men in the right order.
Yeah.
Yeah. A person on the internet writes, "Dear Crate and Crovat." I think it means, it's like Crate and Cravat.
This is the fashion one.
Yeah. From World of Warcraft's mountainous pauldrons to the floating sleeves of Final Fantasy. And he goes for the danger semicolon there. Video games have some unique fashion trends. So in celebration of London Fashion Week, a grand fashion wizard has given you each the power to bring one video game fashion trend to the corporeal realm. With his newfound power, what will you choose? And will Forever on Fire wear be hot this season? Thanks for reading, and thanks for the astounding pods. You're all champions. Cheers, a person on the internet.
I just got the hot pun.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't get that first. My pick would be the subtle metallic floral print in the Deus Ex games, the modern Deus Ex games. So Human Revolution and also Mankind Divided both have this thing. Like, Jensen has it on his coat where, like, it's a black coat and it has black floral print on it. And the only difference is that the floral print is slightly metallic. And so it catches the light. And then also, like, just like a normal cop in the police station has this, like, gold shirt and gold tie where the floral print on it is reflective and the rest of it is not. And it looks really good. And I think Sarif has some kind of, like, metallic gold shirt in Mankind Divided when you talk to him again. I can't remember if it has a floral print on it, but it should.
Nice.
Everyone should look like they're wearing curtains from a palace.
Yeah, all along those lines, I was thinking that the armor costume that you got for being amazing at Advanced Warfare PvP, whatever it was, like Grandmaster, whatever it was, which kind of made you look like Liberace's suit of armor, and it was purple with like fleur-de-lis kind of nonsense all over it.
Like a Fabergé battle suit.
Yeah, that was pretty great. So I was thinking that would be a good winter look for me specifically. But the other thing, I mean, this probably sounds facetious and I can't decide whether I quite intend it to be or not, but it would just be quite nice if bras worked the way that they seem to in video games, with the amount of support they provide for absolutely no material and no sort of, you know, underwiring that's going to stab you in the chest. So,
I think I would go for, I don't know if it qualifies as a fashion choice, but I'd quite like, aura effects that denote what series of bonuses you're currently benefiting from. As a general rule. So, you know, like you've had a cup of coffee this morning, or, you know, you just received a pleasant, you know, email that's made you feel a bit better about the day ahead, and then suddenly you're surrounded by like a swirling blue morale buff.
But would that be visible just to you, or would it be visible to everybody? So then, but people would then know too much, and you wouldn't be able to lie as convincingly. Like, what if they knew that instead of, like, this is probably going to be a really bad example, so I might just cut myself off right now. But what
if you had a +10 deception buff, then that creates a very awkward situation for both.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Or what if you've got the buff that means that you just had a really satisfying poo? Or like, what if you've got the debuff that means that you've got a hangover while you're telling your boss, no, it's definitely the flu.
I want to live in this more honest world with more particle effects.
If you're calling in sick, they can't see your aura though, right?
Speakerphone. I mean, the other one, the
video,
the Skype. You know, what if they come round with like a tureen?
This is already a problem if you're faking a sick,
you know? Or like, you know, what if you've done something untoward with a colleague in a broom cupboard or something, and then you both walked out with the sexy time aura like around you, and you're like, I just went to get the stapler, and then either you've got to explain yourself to the stapler,
could
or like
be the stapler aura.
Exactly.
Stapler aura looks a lot like a sexy time aura.
Yeah.
In a funny administrative mix-up.
This is a lot of auras to keep track of. There's a magazine called, I think,
Aura
It's Life, Chat, It's Life. Oh no, it's Fate, which is that ghost magazine, that weird ghost magazine, which is a lot of the time.
It's about ghosts, it's not itself a ghost.
Well, also kind of partly slightly offensive.
Print's not dead,
and also,
right?
Like, but they do like this thing where I think you can send in a photo and then the aura reader will read your aura off this photo and explain to you what it means. You can like ask a specific question relating to the aura, which would obviously be a lot easier if you could just take an actual photo of the auras.
I would definitely read the magazine where, you know, the aura reader turns around and says, well, this means you currently have 10 stacks of armor ablation, but you will lose one for every single instance of physical damage you take.
Or 2 for a critical. I would also like the neck guard that, Hawk has in Dragon Age 2 to become fashion. The kind of like sticky up part of your breastplate that kind of protects your neck. Looks very good.
You'd like polo necks.
Terrible if you trip over forwards.
Yeah, maybe.
But great if you drop your sandwich.
Yes.
Mixed blessings.
Pretty bad, like, well, if you smoke, then for a certain period it's good because it pushes it forwards, and then after a certain period it's probably bad because it pushes it, like, it gets caught inside your neck guard.
I mean, to be honest, crumbs are going to be a problem. Generally.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a shirt dress in a video game. Which makes me just think that perhaps it should go the other way round, because it shouldn't be, it's a dress that's made up of shirt. So it's like, it's basically a dress that takes on the form of a shirt, so it's buttoned down all the way, down the front, and, you can maybe put a belt round it, or sometimes it's tailored a bit so that it goes in at the waist, or whatever else, and sometimes it is just a really long shirt that you can wear as a dress. But essentially where I was going with that was that I think oftentimes video games don't really reference, I mean, and you can see why in terms of, character models and budgets and, time. But, it's very rare that I remember seeing fashion that isn't just functional in terms of denoting what someone does, or, that sort of basic jeans and a t-shirt, or, a jumper and a skirt kind of combo. You don't see people...
Or super sexy.
Yeah, you don't really see that sort of, so much of the, the kind of women dressing for other women, or women dressing for fashion, I guess. The stuff that is maybe slightly more incomprehensible or more transient or more sort of time dependent, or, it's, that's a completely separate point and wasn't really the question, but, name me a game with a shirt dress.
Yeah, I feel like maybe this just shows my naivety for male clothes, but I feel like most male clothing types do end up being in video games at some point. Like, there's just a lot of men in video games, and they're not totally defined by, or their clothing is not totally defined by trying to show off their assets necessarily. And, so you get like a pretty good range of semi-realistic things in any contemporary set video game.
I think it is also...
But the same is not true of women.
Well, I think it's also skewed a bit by the fact that I used to work in the fashion industry in terms of the writing that I did, and so I would go to fashion shows where it wasn't, like, if you go down the pub with your mates, they are just wearing, a lot of the same clothes that you do see in video games, but that other tranche of what women wear is kind of missing, I would say.
You guys all dress like video games tonight.
So yeah.
Joel writes, what's the best/worst game company name?
So, there's that game company. That's pretty bad. And I heard recently, and unfortunately, I tried to Google this earlier, and it turns out I'm probably not completely right about it, but I think there's one called This Game Company, or something very similar to that, like this, yeah. Something so similar to that game company that there's no way to remember the two as being distinct, which is pretty bad. I also found out recently that there is a mobile games company called Mediocre Games, which I think is kind of great. Because it's like preemptive criticism. It's like, it would be hard to actually say that they're mediocre because they've said it themselves.
I can't really think of any that I like massively. Liking is harder than disliking.
Yeah, it was easy to think of worst ones than good ones.
Or just ones that you kind of imagine that they just said, oh look, that'll do. We need to get on with
There's
the
a lot of
meeting.
that'll do in the industry.
Yeah. Like, even a lot of my friends who own companies will say that about their own company name. It's like, oh, we just have to think of something.
Suspicious Developments is pretty good, to be fair. To be fair. That's justification for a 9-year writing career right there.
Took 9 years to think of it.
So any game developer that starts with a lowercase letter like id, where you can't really get away with not doing it properly, bothers me. But that's just the print proofreading. I hates it. Hates it
Or
to
it messes
death.
up it messes up the capitalization of like a title as well. That's really frustrating.
I quite like Bethesda Softworks because Softworks gets sillier the more you think about it.
Epic Mega Games. It's pretty good.
They don't hold back.
No.
I really like how that merger then led to Square Enix and everyone just Squeenix.
Yeah.
You know, that's just, you know, when you make that merger and you're just like, oh, for God's sake. I suppose, fine. But yeah. I'm just thinking, what else is there out there?
There's a lot of uninspired stuff, as you say. There's Koch. Was a weird name too.
Isn't that someone's name?
It could be. Is it? Koch Media?
I thought it was like an actual surname. It was
Oops.
from a surname.
Yeah, tough one. I can't think of very many. I quite like From Software because it is a bit like that game company, but it's not quite as on the nose.
A friend of mine goes by, I think it's his company name. Certainly it's his Twitter handle. Their Twitter handle. From Smiling. And it's from a Japanese company that introduced their game as, I can't remember what their name was, but, their name was X. It was like, From Smiling X. And it was supposed to be just introducing them, but they just introduced the word smiling in there as well. And, they thought like, From Smiling is the best part of that. The company name is not that interesting, but From Smiling is nice.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where most of the time the game company names, like developers or publishers or whatever, they just sort of fade into the background, or I don't conceive of them as good or bad in and of themselves most of the time, because they're just part of the background noise for identifying the product or differentiating it from something or telling you a bit about maybe what you might expect from it. I quite like Blizzard as a, you know, like, but that's because I think there's just something fun about Zeds, you know, and I quite like the idea of Blizzards, and like ActiBlizzard is, you know, it's like, I kind of have a lot of fun with that, but I think it's mostly, that might just be because of listening to earnings calls and you make your entertainment where you can, to be honest with you. But yeah.
I think Microsoft feels like a dated title for a software company
Microscopic software.
now. Yeah, just tiny little software. Teeny weeny. Baby software.
But like, has that not just faded into, like, you don't even think what it means anymore. It's
true.
just a word, I guess, that is associated with that symbol, I guess, or with just, it sort of becomes almost, you know, a mulch of names, and it's very rare that one will stand up. I quite like Variable State, actually. That's the developer from for Virginia. I remembered thinking that was nice.
Just reminded me, Strange Loop is a nice name. That is the developer of a game whose name I can't remember. So they were better at the company name than they were at the game name. But it was the one where you like pour water into different, maybe it's called Vessel, where you pour water into different vessels and eventually you like turn the water into people, and it's like very good liquid physics. It's like a side-on platformer puzzle game.
Do you guys like Valve as a name? Or is that another one of those?
Yes.
Like,
It's you know,
It also,
really clear iconography.
yeah, and it ended up, obviously they've named a lot of things after it, so it's like the connection with Valve and Steam, and then Steam and things like Steamworks and Steam Pipe, and they find a lot of
Source.
good. Yeah.
No.
That was sort of could be connected, but
I've realised the strongest answer I probably have for this is I hate any game developer name that has a .com or a lot of the time a .net in it, because more often than not they make ArenaNet being an exception.
But what else is there? Like
King.com.
But they're just King now.
They are just King now, but for a while they were King.com, I think. Were they? Am I making that up?
I mean, they might well have
King's pretty
been.
bad either way.
Yeah, I just associate it with the makers of shite exploitative in-app purchase iOS games. If you put a .com in your game name. But, I mean, I would never write a game off on that basis.
I quite like Candy Crush.
Anyway, Zed writes, I've got the flu and I'm feeling terrible. What games are good for when you're sick?
Rest.
All right, Dad.
Sleeping. Having some Lemsip. Not looking at a
Game of
screen.
having some lemsip. I don't know about flu, but when I remember on New Year's Day, I think this year, I played Dragon Age Inquisition for a very, very long time because I felt very, very bad. And there are lots of conditions you can be in where if left alone with no input, no stimulus, all you can focus on is how terrible you feel. But if you can be sufficiently distracted for long enough, then it kind of takes your mind off it. And like TV didn't work for me. I would just lose focus and not engage with it and then go back to feeling bad. And books are the same. I couldn't concentrate enough to do it. And then Dragon Age was like just the right level of engagement where it's like it's an RPG and it has loads of addictive kind of hooky systems that keep you playing to like craft the next thing or unlock the next thing. It's also got like story that you can follow. And also it requires constant interaction, so you can't really like phase out or, lose focus. And that was really good. I just played that for hours and hours and hours on end.
RPGs would be my answer. Depending on how comfortable you are with reading or not, what type of RPG. But the other answer for this, for me, is Civ. I think it's a similar level of if you just want to sink a day, pass the time till you're better, then it has that sort of time goes by when you are playing those games. XCOM would be similar for me as well. Just something that you can easily while away time in, but that doesn't necessarily challenge you to move very quickly or react fast.
I think when I'm sick, the last thing I want to do is be in that physical position of sitting up at a computer. So I think that's the point at which I would say maybe console or, something like a 3DS would be good, because I have had times when I've been feeling really under the weather, like not flu, but, I've sort of maybe played Professor Layton or some Animal Crossing or something and then, napped for a bit and then, played a bit more, like something that you can just close easily and sort of drift off. But also, I found that console stuff, like maybe Oblivion or, stuff like that was kind of, I could do on the sofa with, a little duvet and, or a little, picnic rug or something over me so that I could just keep warm and be really pathetic and like cough really ostentatiously if people came near me. That sort of thing was kind of a nice luxury. I think I've never quite managed to make the same nest feeling, that comforting kind of being swaddled and then playing from that position has never been a thing that has worked for me in front of a PC.
And that is all the questions we've got time for.
Ooh. Aww. An emotional roller coaster. Oh, I'm going to have to remember all of the end things.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Bear with me.
You got it. I believe in you.
So, thank you for listening to the Crate and Crowbar.
We don't normally say that.
What? Don't we?
And at the end.
You don't have to.
Oh, well, anyway, thank you.
Sorry, I won't backseat.
Don't backseat
Backseat
end.
outro.
So, thank you for listening. And then, oh no, we do say that at the very end because everyone does it in that weird slurry way that makes me
Very
think of
end,
Marsh. Yeah. Yes. Okay, fine. So, not thank you yet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For listening.
let's
No thanks
hold,
to you.
let's hold that off. And then let's talk about the website, which is crateandcrowbar.com. Although we just kind of call it Crate and Crowbar. We're not one of those awful companies that Chris hates for some apparent reason, just because website names. There's also the forums, which I don't know if they're working anymore.
No.
They're not working, so I don't have to do that part because I can't remember if it was singular or plural anyway. That we're also on Twitter at Crate and Crowbar. And then there's Discord, which you can find via a handy trail which leads from the website, which I mentioned earlier.
They call them hyperlinks.
to the Discord channel. You might need to download some bits for that, but I think it works in a browser as well. It's fine. And failing that, I'm sure someone will help you.
Just ask on the Discord and they'll help you.
Yeah. What else?
Speaking of asking,
we'd like to ask you.
What were we literally just doing? Yeah.
Oh, if you would like to ask us a question, you can do that by emailing us at
a logical address.
questions@crateandcrowbar.com. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Good. Perfect. And then there's still more. You can contact us individually if you so want to do at all with your time. I don't know what we'd say. Mostly probably things that we've covered in the podcast. Anyway, I'm at Philippa War, which is at PHILIPPAWARR, and Tom is
At Pentadact, PENTADACT.
And Chris is
at C Thurston, that's CTHURSTEN.
I think that's it. And then thank you for listening,
everybody.
Bye.